I've got to know him over the last several months, and I do not feel that he meant to hurt any people in his ward. I don't believe that he meant to hurt anyone. But we can't, I'm not going to ask him to resign. That's his decision. I've had people tell me that I need to ask him to resign. We're not going to do that. That's his decision. I think people should talk to him before we jump to any conclusions. He fought hard to win that race in Ward 5. That being said, I want our community to heal. We don't need to be fighting and bickering the way we have. We need to be we, not you, not them. We need to be we. That's what I wanted to say. Does anyone else have anything?
You know, I was raised in Jackson, Missouri, and the first time I met Peter was at United Methodist Church camp. And so I knew him in youth, and then I got to know him again when I came to this community in '88. The way my grandmother instilled certain thoughts into me was a person should be looked at and thought of with regards to the work they've done through their life in their job or profession or their community or their church. And I've never judged this person based on a single event similar to this when you weigh it against their life work. I know Mr. Tinsley does a lot of work through the church, works on Wednesday meals, has done a tremendous amount of work with the Red Cross. He was an officer in charge of a station in Hurricane Sandy. What we have here is an error of making a post on Facebook that shouldn't have been done. And that in itself is something to be considered. You know, there's some people who are leaders in the community that also have things on Facebook that are egregious and shouldn't be on there as well. I would tend to say that it's important that people be judged on the good that they do. The bottom line is what are they doing for the humanity and their fellow man based on ill choice of you putting a post on Facebook. I would say that if interested parties felt that Mr. Tinsley shouldn't be on council, then they should go the appropriate measures of giving a recall. Because what you have to look at is, regardless of people that have been irritated by this, you also have people that casted a vote for him to commit to do his work in council. So if he just dropped and resigned, then he does a little bit of injustice to those people that voted on him to achieve certain things in the city, which was ran on during his campaign. And I feel that that's the total picture instead of the microscopic view. And that's how I feel about it.
Anyone else? Moving on to workshop required items.
Madam Mayor, we have the Chief of Police, Danny White, come up and give us a report about the pay for gas.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, Captain, members of the council, Councilman Johnson asked me to bring forth a report on the drive-off ordinance that you all passed. I think it was on July the 21st, and very seldom do we have a ordinance that has had a 100% effect. And as of about 3 o'clock today, we've had 0 reported gas drive-offs. So I think the station owners are happy. I know there's a few people that's inconvenienced, but overall, I think this thing's been a good ordinance. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Moving on to workshop required items. The City Council will discuss repealing and replacing the current ordinance on paving city streets. Mr. Kaplan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk with you regarding my concerns and ideas regarding the current street ordinances as they stand today. As you can find is supporting documents as referenced in the packet. There are 3 different sections of Article 2, sidewalks and street improvements, that I have concern over. One is Section 510.130, which is the cost of the street and alley grading. So the second section is 510.140, which is the cost of street repair. And then the Section 510.170, which is cost of curbing and sidewalks. If you look at the city as it stands today, and you look at which streets are paved and which streets are not, you're seeing a pattern. And the pattern is the areas of which the household medium income is the lowest is areas where there's gravel streets. And the reason for that is because this city, through ordinance, has developed an ordinance that where the abutting property owners have to pay 50% of the cost. I've never seen that in my 10-year career. Not to say that it wasn't the standard of practice back in the time, but I haven't seen it over my 10-year career. And so to validate that concern, because maybe I thought, well, this is a new state. I've never been in the state of Missouri before. I've asked staff to validate it. And so as you can see in page 10 of your packet, or you'll see a little grid, we looked at the communities of Hannibal, Kirksville, the third one, I don't know how you can say it, Creve, Creve Coeur. I don't know if I'm going to slaughter that. I apologize. Ozark City, Sykeston, and Farmington. All comparable sized communities. Not a single one of them charges 50% or any charge at all for a road improvement or for a new construction. Again, I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention that I believe, in my professional opinion, that we should be repealing those sections of the ordinance, because I believe it is economically unfair to put that type of economic burden on someone, because right now on the areas where there's ability to pay is extremely low. Does it surprise you that those areas of the city are graveled? And so I know a lot of which we do here in the city is challenging, and it's not always the popular decision. But in this case, in just my professional opinion, it's right to make sure we put everyone on a level playing field. And really, these streets are the ownership of the city, in which we should be maintaining and or building if we decide to improve. And so I open it up for you, Madam Mayor, and the council for any discussion or any questions regarding my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
I have a question. Would we start a program? I know we have several miles of gravel streets. Would we be starting an ongoing program year to year in the budget to maybe accomplish some of this, or how would we go about it?
Yes, sir. Actually, the first line of business that I would like to start funding gravel areas is actually with our STP funds. We had for consideration, which was tabled prior, the Fair Street Bridge project. And I'm not saying, Madam Mayor and council members, that that's not a good project for the city to consider, because I think it is. But we have lots of other eligible projects within the city to use those STP funds, and you'll see that gravel roads are included in the colored areas where they're eligible. And the city has over 6 fiscal years of built-up reserve to be able to be used towards projects. And the only reason why we haven't lost any revenue to date is because we coincidentally have a current MoDOT loan that we owe to MoDOT, in which they're taking principal and interest payments from us in lieu of us losing any revenue. So what I would like to do is, not only one, do I recommend the repeal of this this ordinance, but two, I'm going to be bringing to the next available council meeting the colored map that shows you all of the projects that are eligible for those STP funds, which of that areas that where there are current gravel streets where I'd like to begin my approach. Thank you, Councilman Branham.
Mr. Kaplan, if you actually read the ordinances, it calls for any time we do street repair, anytime we do resurfacing, it falls under the same guidelines. And I know that I have never received a bill for having a pothole replaced or anything like that. We do that constantly. And I think we're at a point, and I agree with you, that we ought to look at this more as maintenance than, and it would probably save us money. I've got calls on a couple of streets down in Ward 5 that wash out routinely.
Yep.
And we're hauling a tremendous amount of gravel. Every time we have a serious storm, these streets wash out, and it's a lot of expense. We would probably be money ahead to go ahead and pave these roads where every time they wash out, we don't have to replace them. But I'm not sure which ordinance. I believe it's right along there with it, the ordinance for paying for streets, that we ought to change that ordinance too.
Yeah, the concern, Madam Mayor, if I may add one more point, also is on the dust level, the air quality for the city that these streets create. And I want to compliment the streets department. I've asked them to start to water down these gravel streets during the hottest months where we get the most dust and the most air particulates in the air for dust. And I compliment Jeremy and his staff for taking on the call and watering down those streets. Even on its hottest day, the water was evaporating pretty quickly. But again, it's that approach of continuing to go back and watering those streets. That's the least we can do to try to keep that dust down until we can get them paved. Because my goal, as Councilman Branham has indicated, is to aggressively start funding these roads where gravel exists because they're unsafe. One, to drive on. Two, the dust issue that becomes an issue for people that have asthma or any type of breathing disorder. But thirdly, again, it's equity. It's the delivering of governmental services. And I want to make sure it's a level playing field for everyone and not based on the ability to pay.
Thank you. Several constituents that I've spoken with, ever since I've ran for the council, and I'm sure you all have heard this too, people wonder why we have so many gravel streets in the city limits. You go in the county and a lot of the county roads are paved. And I think coming up with a decent plan to start paving some of these roads, it would be really important for our city, not only because it's better or it looks better. I think it's just good practice, and it would help establish what we're already trying to do. I mean, growing the city further and just developing it inside the city limits. So I like it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Kaplan, I do think it'd be nice to have all the streets, paved. My understanding was that property owners 50%, if they voted for it, they paid for like 1/3. People on their side of the road paid for a third, and the city paid for the third down the middle and then maintained it forever. Was my understanding. I didn't know there was any charges for any of the grading or any of that portion.
If I may address that as well. What you're referring to is a special assessment.
Yes.
And if someone makes a request for a road to be paved and ahead of schedule, then yes, the special assessment tool can be used through successful petition to where we can pave a road and of course pass that cost on to the property owners if they're all agreeable. We do have that tool available to us. I'm not saying I think that tool should remain. I think if someone wants a street paved and they're willing to pay for it, that's different. Again, that's a special assessment. And I think that tool should be still available to the council in your toolbox. But in this case, I feel that this is the actual cost of the repair, improvements, and new construction that for a street that desperately needs it. And I just don't want to make sure that we're foregoing improvements in the city based on ability to pay. And I'm not saying that's what was done by prior administration. I'm just saying just from the surface, when you see an ordinance that's structured this way, it goes, again, when you look at the overlay of the the city streets and you see where the gravel roads are, it just tells a pretty telling tale as to why they weren't paved.
I know I grew up in the south end on a corner lot, and, you know, we were pretty poor. My dad died when I was 13, and my mother was disabled, and I had 4 sisters. Maybe that's why I'm so honored he had 4 sisters, but anyway, and it was hard on my mother to make those payments, because we had to pay twice, one for the front of the house and one for the side. And she'd complain about it, but we made it through it, and the property values, you know, went up with the paved street,
Right.
which helped us out. And I just think there's so many people that have suffered through some of these payments. I hate to think that we're not, you know, I love to do things for people, okay? And I'd like to see every one of them paid. But the other people that have suffered through it, I don't know what we're telling them other than, okay, you did it too early, should have waited a little bit. I mean,
I
I
think
agree
what
with you,
he's
all
trying
of
to
them need
say-
to be done.
What he's trying to say is they shouldn't have had to suffer through it.
Yeah.
It's not fair that they did.
And, yeah, the city did allow people to make installment payments over a 5-year period.
Yeah.
But again, I believe that was a tremendous hardship to put on these individuals, in which I think they're owed an apology for, in my professional opinion. And again, I wish we could reimburse people for the cost of these roads. We just don't have the money to reimburse for all
No.
past repairs. We have to draw the line somewhere, and I'm asking the council to consider this or come close to drawing the line so we can move forward with getting these streets repaired and or built in a manner that best suits the city and not someone's pocketbook.
Mr. West, did you have a comment?
Yes, I'd like to comment about this proposed revision of the ordinances. My name is Greg West. I live at 1184 County Road 476. And just want you to know that I appreciate the fact that our city manager and the council is considering this revision for the reasons that Mr. Kaplan has enumerated. One of the things that I still think would be maybe appropriate is if a developer of a subdivision, the way I understand it, it would change that. I think he should still be responsible for building his own streets and then turn it over to the city. I think the existing infrastructure we have, the existing gravel streets and all, I think that should be the responsibility of the city. And like you said, if the landowners want to participate to ramp it up and speed it up, that's great. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the fact that the council is considering this, because obviously, Mr. Garris, for many years, it's been the other way. And but I just think that the developer should pay for his own streets. So.
Thank you.
So on your proposal that you're making, when you talk about the colored map, what will the colored map show again?
What it'll show you is the STP-related eligible projects throughout the city. And it starts from the major, I think it's arterial roads, if I remember right, or collector roads, on up, and it's color-coded by those different categories on up, and you'll see that most of the city streets in question are color-coded in one way, shape, or form. And so what I'd like to do is work with the council if, in regards to my proposal, is select a street or streets that are gravel, that are in this colored region of the STP map to pave with STP funds.
Now, we have used STP funds in the past, haven't we?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But are you saying that we maybe didn't use them as broadly as we could have?
Yeah, right now, the project that was under consideration was you were pooling up money to pay for the Fair Street Bridge project, which, again, for the record, I want to say it's an appropriate use of money.
Yes.
And actually, it's a good project. However, the Fair Street Bridge isn't the only way in and out for trucks to get inside our industrial park. And the bridge is not on the verge of being closed down. It's on the verge of being possibly downgraded as to the amount of tons it can carry, but it's not in the verge of being shut down. I verified that with MoDOT. So what I am asking the council to consider is the full breadth of everything that is eligible. And if, one, I'm suggesting we can use it towards paving a gravel road, but there are other areas that the council may find appropriate. And I just want to show you all that's eligible, and then once we select a project or projects based on the amount of money we have available, then we can move forward with designing and getting everything ready to roll. Because it takes about 2 years from the beginning.
When's the last time that we used STP funds that you know of?
It's been pulling up for the last 6 years, and so I can only assume it's been a while since you've utilized the balance. Now, you get roughly around 60 to 70,000 per year through the program through the state. So they might have used their allotment, let's say, for a year, but I'd have to look that up
Okay.
and get back to you to
Okay.
answer your question.
All
I
right.
can just tell you that they're pulling money faster than they're spending it. That I can tell you for sure.
Okay.
Mr. Kaplan, I agree that the Fair Street Bridge is an important project. As a member in workshop, I believe Ms. Pearson, said, that's an old bridge with the pylons in the riverway, in the waterway, and it catches debris and then causes some flooding back up in the south end of town in Ward 1. And the new bridge would be a free-spanning, which would take care of some of that, hopefully. And I also had talked to MoDOT and asked, because I was wondering about how long these STP funds, and they told me they had a life of 6 years. And said they'd been requested, they'd brought up the Fair Street Bridge, said several years ago, but due to it having some structural problems, that we'd use some other federal funds, and he gave me some name that they used, that then we couldn't touch it for 10 years. But they're the ones that had brought that up to for the city for a project. And said it just, stayed on there 6 years and use the money, and then the next year you get it more, and then, like you said, it'll bank for 6 years before they start taking it.
Yeah, the city is almost in a perfect scenario, so to speak, is if we didn't have an existing MoDOT loan, we'd be losing money. It would be going back to the state to redisperse amongst other communities. But since we do have a current debt loan with MoDOT for a street right now, the amount that we normally would have lost after that 6-year threshold can be applied towards principal and interest towards that debt.
Yeah.
So if we didn't have that, we would be losing money.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, Jim Chrisman, 464 North Main, and I'd like to compliment you on bringing this issue forward. Could it be possibly that this is the new direction that the council is going to take? I like it. One thing that hasn't been talked about here, and it's not appropriate yet, but you haven't defined on how you're going to fund this project, and that's something for the future. Ed, you're absolutely right. I feel sorry for the people that have had this problem in the past, but they shouldn't have. Streets are not part of the property owner's responsibility, except as Greg mentioned, in subdivisions. I've paid for my share of them in private subdivisions. The other thing I would make note of, we have a TDD out in the northwest part of the town, and I don't think that's being paid for everybody, for roads for everybody. I mean, it's exactly what Mr. Kaplan is asking us to do, but for all of the citizens in Poplar Bluff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on that issue? Do you need us to move this?
Yeah, I'd like you to move it to the voting session for the next eligible council meeting, please.
I'll make a motion. We move to the next council meeting.
Motion and a second to move item A to the next council meeting on September 23rd. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, the city council will discuss the donation of property to the city from Wells Fargo Bank and located at 826 Poplar Street.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We received notification from Wells Fargo Bank that there was a property within the city limits of Poplar Bluff that was eligible for donation. After I received the address and went and looked at the property, actually the inside of the property and the outside, in my opinion, and I'm not a contractor, so disclaimer, the property, in my opinion, looked in pretty good shape. Now, it does need a little bit of repair work and some maintenance, but I believe this house is an awesome opportunity to redevelop the property, either through the city or the school. I understand has a nice rehabilitation program that we may be able to talk to them about to rehab this home and get it back on the market. That I think would be a great piece of public service work for our community. And we did verify that the property does not owe any back debt taxes or anything. We verified that through, we first called the county recorder, which in Michigan is the Register of Deeds, so I had to get used to the new language. They couldn't verify for me if there was anything past due. They referred us to a title company, just any title company, which we have contacted. And at this point, we have not seen any recorded liens or debt on the property, because at first when I saw the donation, I'm thinking, well, there's got to be something owed on it. But to date, we have yet to find something. And so I'm asking council to consider the agreement between City of Poplar Bluff and Wells Fargo Bank for the donation of the said property. And so I'd entertain any questions or concerns at this time, Madam Mayor.
I also went by and looked at it. It looks like it's in pretty good shape. And it would be great for the school to get some of those kids to get experience and get it back on the tax rolls and collecting tax money from the materials and whoever lives in there and anything else on it. It's like we need to work on some of our abandoned properties.
We do.
Same way.
And this house has the original hardwood floors in it. It's beautiful property. It really is.
Mr. Kaplan, I think Mr. Christmas said, is this the new direction? This is the direction I want to go. I'm excited about the community development that you're interested in doing for our city. So this sounds like a good opportunity for us.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments?
And Mayor, I make a motion to move this to voting session September 23rd.
Second.
Motion and a second to move item B to the voting session on September 23rd. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, the City Council will review a recommendation from the Municipal Utilities Advisory Board regarding the transfer of an easement from the City of Poplar Bluff to New Wave Communications.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This agenda item deals with the transfer of cable easements from the City of Poplar Bluff to New Wave Communication. These cable easements were included in the sale of the cable department, and this is simply a formality transferring these easements. I believe in your packet you were given a list of the easements. We discussed this at the advisory board and would recommend their approval. Any questions?
Mr. Poplar, we will not ever have a need for any of these.
These are cable only, not electric or water sewer. These are cable only.
Sounds like you've covered it. Thank you.
And Mayor, I make a motion to move this to the voting session September 23rd.
Second.
Motion and a second to move item C to the voting session on September 23rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, the City Council will review a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve a request to install a crematorium to better serve customers that desire cremation. The property is located at 1100 Iron Bridge Road, and the applicant is MVP Investments, doing business as Moore Funeral Service. Is there someone here to address?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you stated, MVP Investments, doing business as Moore Funeral Service, are the owners. This is a conditional use request. We've had one other crematory in the past, and they received a conditional use permit pretty much under the same conditions. The zoning out here is on Iron Bridge Road is C2 General Commercial. Surrounding land use to the north and is RS1 Rural Residential. To the south and east is C2 General Commercial. And to the west is County, which would have no zoning. It was annexed in 2000. The comprehensive plan calls for commercial development in this area. Site work is ongoing. There is a building going up on this site as we speak. Utilities are available to the site. Access would be from Iron Bridge Road. Had the big paper clip and I couldn't see my words. Cremation procedures and equipment have changed over the years and have a reduced amount of smoke and emissions. The planning department feels the crematory would fit into a residential setting since it will be installed inside the building, and it's a pre-built unit that is brought in. They are very heavily regulated by state and federal authorities. We have one here in town that's been in place and in use for about 6 years now, and I don't think anyone's even noticed it's there since it went in. There have been some inquiries from neighbors concerned that traffic stacking for funeral services will block Iron Bridge Road, and we did make a stipulation on that. It was not contentious during the planning and zoning process, and the staff does recommend approval of this request for a conditional use permit to install a crematory with the following stipulation: that no parking be allowed on the south side of this section of Iron Bridge Road, and that no parking signs would be installed on the south right-of-way of Iron Bridge Road. We had this conversation in planning and zoning before it came out, and we wanted to make sure this stipulation was put into the wording. And other than that, I would take any questions you might have. And one of the owners, Andy Moore, is here tonight to answer questions that I might not be able to.
Thank you.
I have actually looked at the one Mr. Avery's talking about down on Vine Street.
Yes, sir.
And it's looked at in operation, and it does not really emit anything, no odors or anything that I think would be detrimental to the area. I actually went out and looked at the building, didn't realize that huge building was going up out there, and I don't think there will be any problem, in my opinion, of the fallout of anything that would affect that area. Just my opinion.
I had some people call me about the traffic situation out there, and I believe we've got it corrected now, so they're satisfied with it. They didn't want the traffic going by up around the kindergarten area because all the traffic there, so they're going straight out to PP Highway.
I'm Andy Moore, 341 Terrace Trail, Poplar Bluff. And I'll be the owner of Moore Funeral Service. I want to make myself available in case y'all have any questions at this time. I have absolutely no objections to the traffic on Iron Bridge Road. We're building a parking lot that I believe is ample for any size service. While I can't say it'll never happen, I don't believe it will happen. But if it does, the staff and I will take any measure necessary to make sure that people know that they need to be parking on the north side of the road and facing the west. And that basically helps us as well with any procession leaving the funeral home. Any questions?
Appreciate your willingness to work with the neighbors.
Absolutely. Anything I can do to help them is fine, because I want to be a good neighbor.
Thank you.
So, all right, thank you all.
If there's nothing else, Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion we move this to the voting session on the 23rd.
I was second.
Motion and second to move item D to the voting session on September 23rd. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, the City Council will review a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to deny a request to rezone property from R2 General Residential to O1 Office Professional to operate a dental office as a conforming use. The property is located at 1920 Northwood Drive, and the applicant is Jared Beard Family Dentistry, located at 1611 Lurleen Road.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, pardon me. As you stated, Jared Beard is the property owner. This is a residence at this time. He's owned it for a few months. The request to rezone to O1 Office Professional was something that he called and talked to me about. When I look at rezoning, I look at it based upon the merit of the zoning and the use allowed. And considering where it's at, I thought it was feasible. And so it would have to be as a conforming use as a dental office. and would not be used as residential. It would be, if it became O1, it would only be for the O1 allowed businesses. Existing zoning is RS2, general residential, single family. To the north, the land use is C2, general commercial. To the south and to the east, it's RS2, general residential. And to the west, it is C2, general commercial. And it's been zoned that way since 1972. Comprehensive plan does call for medium-density housing in this area. The physical characteristics are the slopes to the south and the west, and utilities are available to the site. Presently, the access is from Northwood Drive. Police and fire protection is available. Designation of this property as O1 office professional would be a shift in this area, but the zoning in this area is diverse. It is surrounded on two sides by commercially zoned property and on two sides by single-family residential. The O1 office professional zoning district was adopted in order to have quiet, restricted commercial uses, such as an attorney's office, dental offices, etc., that do not inhibit or encroach on neighborhood settings. According to the zoning ordinance, the O1 district is to act in the capacity of a transitional and supporting zone. Bulk limitations are designed, a big paper clip, to provide maximum compatibility with less intensive land uses in adjacent residential districts and with more intensive land use in adjacent commercial districts. The ordinance has specific requirements for signage and parking restrictions to keep the neighborhood feeling in the area. Parking and signage would have to be approved by the planning department prior to issuing a remodeling permit or a business license. Any changes to stormwater runoff must be approved by the planning department. The Planning and Zoning Commission did make a recommendation to deny. I, as the planner, made a recommendation to approve when it went to Planning and Zoning, and that is still my recommendation. And again, when I made the recommendation to approve, I put two stipulations into the recommendation. The Planning and Zoning Commission put no stipulations in theirs because they were recommending to deny. I will read my recommendations. And this was contingent upon discussions with the neighborhood. A 6-foot privacy fence must be built on the property line between the O1 zoned property and any residential use property. And all patient parking must be away from the residential property lines. I have evaluated and determined the number of parking spots that would be required to be added, and that would have to be adhered to if this did move forward. Questions?
Where would the parking be at? Is it going to be on?
Toward Westmore. Westmore is the one that...
Where the lot is now. I mean, there's like a house and a lot, correct?
He has 2.5 lots that he purchased when he purchased this house. The lot sits on a lot and a half, and the sharp angle corner that's Westmore and Northwood right there. But he owns all that all the way down to Westmore, and he would have to add parking on that side or toward the rear, and he would also have to have stormwater detention in place if he added impervious surface. So yes, he would be parking toward the west or the highway side.
That lot is it large enough for a retention?
Yes.
Retention basin?
Yeah, it is. And we have a we have a curbside drain grate at the southeast corner of Westmore and Northwood. Obviously, we have potential for flooding in this immediate area, Poplar Square and some of the other improvements in that area. But yes, that would have to be dealt with according to the stormwater management ordinance. So there is room for parking and for stormwater. He would have to have an engineer design a plan for him.
So the parking be off-street then?
When he came to me and looked at it, he has an existing driveway that goes onto Northwood. It would be very difficult to have a handicap access on the lower west side lot, and I made the judgment that he would be allowed to use the upper driveway for a handicap access into the building, provided that we move forward with the process, but that other patient parking and employee parking would be to the west, which would be toward the highway side, toward Duncan Law offices. Does that answer your question, David?
Yes.
Okay.
During the planning and zoning meetings, you said it was denied. I'm curious, one was the vote, was a split vote. Do you remember what the vote was?
6-4, I think.
Yep.
We were minus a couple of members at the Planning and Zoning Commission, but it wasn't by a great margin. But there was quite a bit of controversy. We have, and matter of fact, you have quite a few people in the audience tonight that are going to want to speak, I'm sure,
And I know
before.
several of those, and today several have contacted me, and I went back and looked at the property today, and I'm going to really have to do some serious consideration if we
Right.
move forward to a vote. But I wanted to hear from
Certainly.
some of the residents. Is the owner of that property here tonight?
He is.
And I'd like to hear from him,
Yes.
too.
And obviously, I don't have the opportunity to wait until everybody weighs in with their position and input. I make my recommendations prior to the fact and base them upon the ordinances and the rules. But I did know that this was not going to be a simple solution, when it began. And I informed the owner of that it would be, controversial. But any other questions I can answer, I'd be glad to.
I was at the initial P&Z meeting, and is there a covenant in the subdivision that allows, if you live there, that you can have like a physician, architect, that kind of thing?
I was told that there are. The city does not enforce subdivision covenants, and Dr. Beard informed the Planning and Zoning Commission that there were covenants that made some allowances, and one of the residents, or one of the owners, adjoining owners, had an attorney who is also here tonight, and I think he was in agreement that there were covenants. I don't know if they're active covenants, because subdivision covenants have to be enforced by a subdivision association board, and I don't know if other than the fact that when you buy a property and they give you the covenants that existed when that subdivision went in, I don't know how enforceable or non-enforceable they might be, Dr. Russian, but
Okay.
but
that's
yes.
fine. Okay.
I just want to point out to the council, everyone should have got in their packet something from City Manager Kaplan. There should be pictures of this whole thing. I don't know if you could see that or not, but.
And we put photos in to show if you're standing at this property, what you would see looking all directions.
Yes.
If no other questions from me, I'll sit down because I'm sure other people want to talk.
Thank you.
Guess you guys want to talk to me now, huh? Jared Beard, 569 County Road 564. I'm the property owner at 1920 Northwood. I'm a dentist here in this town. I've been a dentist in this town since May of 2012. I've been here for 2 years. I graduated from University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Dentistry. Employ 2 expanded function dental assistants, dental hygienists, and then myself. I want to see if I can transfer this property from RS2 to 01 professional commercialization of lots 1, 2, and 3 in the Northwood Hills subdivision. My hours of operation are Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5, and then 1 Friday of the month. I work in Poplar Bluff from 8 to 2, and then the remaining Fridays I work in Dexter, Missouri. My main reasons for commercializing this property will allow me to double the size of my current location. This house is around 3,600 square foot. It will also allow a private entrance for my staff members, private entrance for myself. It will allow private parking for my staff, and allow a private bathroom and a private break room for my staff members. The building at 1920 Northwood is a perfect location and fits the requirements set forth by the 01 Office of Professional Commercialization. It is designed to accommodate medical, dental, and similar services. The architect and landscape design are designed to foster aesthetically pleasing building, which will not discriminate against the character of the neighboring lands, which will mean that it will maintain its residential look. The list of neighboring lands, you guys have, I believe in the packet, an aerial photograph. It shows all the adjoining property. You can see that to the north is the city of Poplar Bluff, to the northeast is TLP Associates, to the northwest is the Bank of Poplar Bluff, to the west is Wallace Duncan, southwest is also TLP Associates, to the south is Miss Tammy Harper, and to the east is Miss Darlene Hutchison, the last two being the residential lots. The first 5 was the commercial lots. This dental office will make a nice transition from the abundance of commercial property that surrounds this individual property and to the residential lots that are on the east and the south. The 01 does have restrictions that this property at 1920 will adhere to. First being signs that Mr. Avery talked about. The signs shall contain only the name of the business and business is conducted, and that the sign shall not be more than 32 square feet. The sheet metal sign that I have pictures there in your packet is 24 square foot, so that is below the recommended 32 square foot. Falls within the restrictions. The restrictions of 01 for the front yard is 30 feet. The actual size of this yard is 99 by 57. The side yard restriction is 8 feet. The actual yard is 188 by 156. The rear yard of this restriction is 25, and the actual yard is 99 by 131. The restrictions for 01 has a total square foot of the property to be 10,000, and the actual is 18,612, and the front yard width is 75 square feet, and this actual is 99 square feet. The 01 office professional also has a recommendation to be the walls of the building should be faced with brick, stone, treated concrete, stucco, or glass. The building at 1920 is brick, so that should fall into the requirements set forth by the 01 professional in the city of Poplar Bluff. Once again, I want to reiterate that this building will maintain residential look. I got on the computer and made a computer-generated diagram that shows what the residential look will look like. The only thing that I'm going to do on the front of this house is I'm going to take out the 2 garage doors. I'm going to replace one of those with an entrance and the other one with a big size window. This building also falls in restrictions set forth by the Northwood Hill subdivision that Dr. Rushton was talking about. On July the 28th was the first plan and zoning meeting. There was quite a bit of confusion and concerns by the neighbors. I hand-delivered a letter to the committee, and that you have that in your packet too. Scheduled meeting at the bread company for August the 5th. At that time, in that plan and zoning meeting, there was 3 concerned neighbors. One of those showed up, Mrs. Tammy Harper. I think she's in the audience tonight. When I sat down with her, me and my wife and 2 kids, I wanted to thank her for coming to this meeting, but I also wanted to talk to her about, I did not want to change her mind. I did not want to sway her vote. I really don't care about all that. All I want to know is what I can do to help this situation, help her with her concerns. So we talked about a few things. She had a few concerns. One concern was she was worried about the parking spots. Mr. John Scott indicated that there would be 25 spots needed. I consulted with Dennis Avery, told him the amount of square footage that would be utilized by patients in it. And the 01 professional commercial relations said that I would need 5 additional spots for patients and 3 additional spots for staff members. And Mrs. Harper did not want the parking to come all the way down to her residential property line. So if I can work with the city, if this thing goes through, to make sure that that does not happen, to appease her. She also did not want patients utilizing the alleyway that kind of splits, goes in between the property owners. So what I suggest and what she suggested and agreed upon would be that we put a metal sign stating that this would be employee parking only, that no patients utilize the spot and to utilize the north side of the property. She was also concerned about the signs that I have currently posted, which you'll see in your packet. I just have 2 signs. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. It's very professional. One is with just my name with the initials after, and then the other one is just my name with dental hygienist and the hours of operation. So very simple, not flamboyant, don't light up, not neon, nothing. It's very, very easy, very, very professional. She also did not want a privacy fence constructed, so I agreed upon that if the city allows it, if this all will go through. She has spent a large amount of money on her house and does not want that inhibited by a privacy fence, so I agree upon that. So, in essence, not much change is going to be done to the north side. Very little change at all, if any, on the south side. I plan on putting the sheet metal sign that you have in your packet on the entrance, by the entranceway, and I plan on putting my letters that are on the side of the building on the west side of the property. I felt like the meeting went pretty well with Mrs. Harper. I don't know. I wasn't there to try to win her vote. I just wanted to see what I could do to help her ease the concerns that she had. The other two neighbors, Mrs. Hutchison and Ms. Kirby, were not able to come to the meeting, so I can't really speak for them very much, what I could do to help them. But if they have any thoughts or concerns, then I would be able to address those and help those. In conclusion, the building at 1920 Northwood meets the requirements of 01 professional requirements. It fits within restrictions of the Northwood Hills subdivision. I have tried my best to address the concerns of the neighbors and come up with solutions. This would be an easy transition between the commercial lots that adjoin this property and the two residential lots that adjoin this property. I would kindly ask that the city, the council, and the mayor approve this to go to 01 professional commercialization. And keep in mind that this dental office will be the perfect neighbor. It'll be a neighbor from 8 to 5, Monday through Thursday. There's no weekends, no holidays, no Super Bowl parties, no Cardinal celebrations. And that's it. Any questions?
Thanks. Answered all of mine.
Thank you.
No? All right. I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor?
John Scott, 357 North Main Street. Madam Mayor, council members, Ms. Kirby, Mr. Kaplan. Forgive me if I talk too fast because I've made this argument about 3 times now, but I want to focus on a couple of different aspects of this request that I believe indicate that the Planning and Zoning Commission did get it right. Number one, we get really hung up on Dr. Beard, seems like a good guy, and maybe he's going to do what he says. But the question before the council is rezoning this property forever. It's not just my client, Darlene Hutchison, who's owned the property next door since 1980, or the other 35 or so people that signed the petition I've submitted to Ms. Kirby today in opposition to this rezoning. The vast majority of the adjoining landowners have voiced their opposition to this rezoning, and for good reason. Rezoning this property sends the wrong message to the citizens of this community, to the neighborhoods of this community, and the lifeblood of this community. People must have reasonable expectations that their property is going to stay zoned a certain way. You've talked earlier about paving streets, which is a wonderful thing to do. People should have expectations to have a paved street in front of their house, just like they should be able to expect the zoning will remain the same. If they're going to live somewhere in a neighborhood in this community for 35 years, the city shouldn't be able to just come in and change the neighborhood, change the house next door, and let them do what they want. So it sends a very negative message to those people in this community who want to live in neighborhoods and enjoy a neighborhood and don't want to have commercial businesses next door. Secondly, it sends a negative message to commercial developers because folks in this community build commercial buildings, they put them in commercially zoned areas, and they want people to rent from them, or they want people to buy that property. But if you allow people to, like Dr. Baird, move an existing business from a commercially zoned area to a residential area, then it sends a message to those commercial developers, why should I risk money, time, and effort to develop commercial buildings when the city is going to allow my renters to just go find a neighborhood on a corner lot and buy a house at an auction and move? So you're sending a negative message to not only the citizens of this community, but also the commercial developers. We'll talk a little bit about the specifics of this particular proposal. And Dr. Baird mentioned it, there is a restrictive covenant that requires a person to live in the house if they're going to operate it. It specifically mentions dentists and other things. And Dr. Baird's original proposal, I don't know if you will see his original proposal, but his original proposal was that he and his family were going to live in the basement of this house and operate his dentistry upstairs. From the first meeting that we had with Planning and Zoning to the second meeting, he changed that proposal because he realized in '01 you can't live in the house. So I would agree that the restrictive covenants may or may not be enforceable. You know, maybe a court somewhere will have to decide that issue. But the reality is that those 35 people in that neighborhood should not have to resort to going to court to enforce restrictions that have been in place since 1972. The parking issue, we've argued that parking issue forever, and I'll respectfully disagree with Mr. Avery on his calculations for parking. Your ordinances say that for a medical building, you have to have one parking place for every 150 square feet of the building. Okay, if we want to argue this is not a medical building, that's debatable. Let's say there's a provision for other buildings that don't fall under medical. That's one spot for every 300 square feet. That's a total of 12 feet based on my calculations. Dr. Beard mentions he needs to have an additional 8 parking places. I'm not sure how many parking places are there now, but it's going to be somewhere between 12 and 24 in my opinion. That may be another issue that has to be determined somewhere else. You've obviously got a water problem in this area. I believe that some of the neighbors that are opposed to this are opposed specifically because of that reason. I understand the city's put a lot of effort into a new drainage pipe, a new drainage area over there by the Children's Division. Whether that works or not, who knows, but this could certainly create more water flow coming down through there. But the bottom line is that Dr. Baird may get, he may be a dentist and he may work there forever. He may work there for 2 days, or he may get this rezoned and sell it next week. He's not bound by putting a dentist's office in this property once it's rezoned. And there are any number of things that could be on this property besides a dentist shop. So I want the council to be sure and look at this on a broader picture and not just these parties. And if, Madam Mayor, if I could just for a moment. I'm not going to bore you with all of this, but for purposes of illustration, this sign lists everything that could be on an 01 designation. And I would encourage the council to look at the ordinance because it's pretty much open to anything. You can have a gymnasium there, you can have a nursing home, you can have, it appears that you could have a police office, post offices, any government building, medical, dental, health related, legal, engineering, surveying, architecture, a whole bunch of stuff. Basically anything you can think of could be there on this property, because once it's rezoned, it's rezoned. And when you've got an overwhelming outpouring of the citizens in this neighborhood on Sylvan and Sunset and Old Orchard and Northwood that have all expressed their concerns, then clearly the Planning and Zoning Commission got this right, and I would encourage the council to deny this request. One other thing I will do, because I think it really fits this situation, Section 405010 is the title, intent, and purpose of zoning. This is your ordinance, City of Poplar Bluff ordinance. Section 3A. In the past, residential neighborhoods have deteriorated because they were invaded by small, isolated commercial uses and by more intensive residential uses such as duplexes or apartment buildings. The great majority of our population desires to and does live in single-family homes which they own and which are located on fairly large lots. The regulations establish residential districts particularly designated to provide maximum protection for single-family homes. And that's what we need to do, is we need to send a message to our citizens that we will protect their rights and that we will encourage folks to live inside the city limits and not to move outside the city limits where they can live in neighborhoods with very strict covenants that are enforced. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I do represent the neighbor directly to the east, I think. Several other people are here. I don't know if they will speak. Some are nervous. Some are sort of riding on our deal, so that's fine. I'll answer any questions anybody has. We've spent a lot of time on this at the Planning and Zoning Commission level.
Mr. Scott, I have a question that just popped into my head, because I'm going down the list, like this you're holding up there. Was it discussed in planning and zoning for like a conditional use permit, which we issue at times, just so that owner, if he's there, it prevents what you're talking
Councilman Brandon, that's an excellent question. I don't recall that really being seriously discussed. There were discussions by Mayor Pearson if we could somehow restrict the use as to only a dentist office, and I don't know that we could do that in any way whatsoever. So I don't believe that was ever sought by the property owner or suggested by Mr. Avery.
I would be curious just what your client thinks about the idea. Since this, or Dennis can maybe give us a little leeway on what.
In 01, there is no conditional use that would allow for a dentist office. There was only 2 items in here that are conditional uses in a 01 district, and that is a child or daycare center or nursery school, and a banking and pharmacy services requiring drive-through window services. All drive-throughs are conditional use. And I do recall all the meetings we had, and there was a question that came up, and I believe Mayor Pearson asked it, about how we might allow just that without allowing anything else. And I said, if you change the zoning, you allow, and John, you'll have to admit I was forthright on this. If you change the zoning.
One thing.
I'll take one. If you do change the zoning, you do allow whatever is allowed in 01. Because you cannot restrict it by a conditional use because it's not an option in the 01 district. The only zoning that allowed for a conditional use for a dental office is an RA zoning, which is residential apartments, which did not come into play because that was not a viable use and would have probably opened a whole other can of worms, actually. So that's all I have. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
And you'll see from my client's been there since 1980. Most of the names on that list are frankly older citizens that have lived here in Poplar Bluff for generations, have been in those houses in that neighborhood at least that long. And they're the ones who I think the council should protect, those people who've been here for a really long time and expect their property rights to remain the same. One other thing, just one little thing.
Go ahead.
We've heard a lot about protecting the rights of the many over the rights of a few. And this is a prime example of that. You have a person who wants to change something and essentially, against what several other people in the area want to do, 35 people. So you have an opportunity to protect the rights of the many versus the right of one person who, seems like a really good guy, and I'm sure he's going to do well. He is doing well now. He's got a dentist office. He's working in a commercially zoned area over on Lurlin and North Westwood. So, he bought the house at an auction knowing full well the zoning wasn't correct, and now it's become my client's issue to have to try to deal with that, and that's why I'm here. But I appreciate your attention. Yes, sir.
Have you polled, when you keep using the word 35, have you polled those residents and you have 35 people that say they do not want this coming there?
I presented a petition to Ms. Kirby tonight that I believe has 34 or 35. I was handed one of those pages tonight, and I'm not sure. It's either 34 or 35. I know of 2 other people that called me today. I was out of the office and was unable to get their signature. People who solicited me to sign, which is unusual. The main purpose for that petition, you'll see in reference at the top, if the ordinance is convoluted, Mr. Smith didn't write it, it was written a long time ago, but if owners of 30% of the area within 185 feet of the proposed rezoned area express their opposition, then the council must pass the request by a 5/7 majority. And so the purpose for the petition originally was to get at least 30% of the adjoining landowners. Well, we quickly realized, and this was last Thursday, Friday, before holiday weekend, we picked up probably 80% of those adjoining landowners. One lady, I think, is an absentee landowner. She has a rental house, and we couldn't find her. The commercial property around there has voiced their disagreement with the proposal, as the other adjoining landowners have. And in the process of doing that, word kind of got out. I only got one other signature. My client talked to a few people in the area, and we got that many signatures as of today. I'm sure that number will grow between now and the next meeting. But those people have all expressed. I have not personally spoken with. I spoke with one person other than my client on that list about this issue. And again, it was a holiday weekend, so we didn't spend a lot of time on it. But it shows you that people are concerned. Everybody on a corner lot on all those streets are concerned about this. And you all know as well as I do that we have an older population. We have neighborhoods that are not thriving that great. And when you start plugging in commercial property on the corners and the sides, people are going to move out, or people are not going to move in when those houses come for sale. They're going to end up, being rentals or whatever else, and we're going to lose the fabric of our community, which is the neighborhood. That's the good thing about living in a small town in rural Missouri, is you have neighborhoods. But I appreciate that question. It gave me a chance to talk for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. When we had the planning and zoning meeting, this was a very controversial issue. I believe many of the people on the Planning and Zoning Commission were on the fence, I included. But it appears that there's just tremendous opposition.
This is very strong to me.
Tremendous opposition to it being rezoned.
Well, and it is strong. One of the concerns that I have, a lot depends on the flavor, the surrounding area. I have witnessed property near my office be zoned commercial, and I never fought that, ever. There was going to be a family complex built out by the subdivision I live in, and none of the people in that subdivision were against the complex being built. None of them. The only thing that they were concerned about is getting only access from the highway and not using the city street for the access. So I think, a lot depends on the area, but, in my experience, what I've seen, and, I'll give it consideration, but I've never opposed anybody adjacent to me, anybody near me, going commercial for, for a good reason. I wouldn't want a strip bar near me or anything like that, but, in the instances I mentioned, none of the neighbors opposed those changes. So I'll take consideration, like Councilman Ram said, but that's been my experience, what I've witnessed.
Any further comments or questions on this issue?
Thank you.
My name is Robbie Grable. I live at 161825 Northwood, and the only reason I come up is because I heard somebody on this side say they would like to hear from someone of the neighbors, and I'm one of the very last few neighbors that actually built on Northwood. And I've been there 10 years, and actually I didn't build until the neighborhood was probably 30 years old, because I've lived in the Big Bend Sunset area, and I love that area. And I knew that that area had never changed from probably 30 years ago. I've watched this neighborhood. Sorry. When you come into this neighborhood, Big Bend, Sunset, and Northwood, to me it's beautiful, because when you come into Big Bend, has the trees all the way down the front, all the way down the middle of the road, and that's one reason I lived on Big Bend at one time. I just loved it. And then when you come into Sunset, on the end, at the same end, they've got trees on the end there of the housing, and it's a welcoming, inviting area. And then when you come in on the end of Northwood, you have those trees sitting right there in the house going up the hill, and it just looks like, okay, come on into our beautiful neighborhood. I'm very proud of our neighborhood, and I just hate to see the trees and it being chipped off, even though it's not a big thing like you might think, but one little area getting chipped off, it could open up something else for Big Bend and Sunset too. And as you're going up Northwood, that's kind of an incline, a little hill there. And even though you may have parking all over the place, sometimes, somebody, if it's a business, it's going to be on the side of the road. And really, going uphill, I try to be as careful as possible. I just hate to see more traffic and more people parking on the side of the hill there. And, you know, I just believe with all of the access of zoning already of commercial of Poplar Bluff, I have no idea. I meant to find out this week, but I failed in finding out how many commercial zone areas we have that's already opened up in Poplar Bluff that is sitting there just waiting for a wonderful business like Mr. Bernard Beard. You know, I know he would be welcomed in any of the places that's already zoned for commercial with wide open arms. Unfortunately, I'm just not one of the neighbors, and I haven't spoken to any. I've spoken to a lot of neighbors in the last two days, and none of them wants this in the neighborhood. And I just, with respect, would ask you to go with the neighbors on this and the big neighborhood of Big Bend, Sunset, and Northwood on this. I wish Mr. Beard all the luck in the world, but I would ask that you just go with the neighbors, please.
Thank you, Ms. Grable.
Mayor and council, I'm Darlene Hyde Hutchison. My property is next door to this 1920 Northwood that's being considered for rezoning. When we bought our home on 1906 Northwood in 1989, we realized we were close to commercial, but we were told by the bylaws would prevent businesses from coming into our area. My late husband read this and felt we were protected with the restrictions that read residents only. He was a real estate broker. I dare say all my neighbors have the bylaws in their abstracts and felt the same protection. I have watched properties change ownership and businesses brought in and other changes in Poplar Bluff Square and the strip mall. Nothing stays the same and won't if the zoning on 1920 Northwood goes forward. There's always changes. I have talked with many of my neighbors in Northwood Hills, and they all say they are opposed to changes in our zoning. They all have bylaws in their abstracts and felt they were secure that we had a residential only area. They acted in good faith when they purchased their homes. We have a good neighborhood and good neighbors, and we request that the zoning not be changed. Let us continue to have our residential neighborhood without fear of businesses coming into our Northwood Hills. The street should be the breaking point between the residences and the businesses. These are our homes. We have worked hard to buy and maintain them, and no one should be able to come in and decide, this is a subdivision that I will put in a dental office. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchison.
I'm Tammy Harper. I live at 1851 Sunset Drive. I live directly to the south of the 1920 Northwood. I'm completely opposed to this. I did meet with Mr. Beard to see what his plans were, as discussed in the first plan and zoning, the signs, where the parking. I am opposed to all of it, but I don't want the 6-foot fence. My biggest concern is I do have small children still at home. They play in the backyard. You're looking at making this into a commercial piece of property that's going to have traffic, it's going to have extra people, it's going to be an unsafe environment for them. Can they only, go out and play when his office isn't open? I mean, I've lived there 10 years. I've added on to the house. I've did drastic home improvements to keep it updated. And I see my property value going down, it being an unsafe area, and it takes away from my neighborhood. we're surrounded by commercial, but once you leave the bank, the real estate, the attorney's office, you're in a residential community. You're home. Not to have one directly in my backyard that I have to share an alley with, along with the rest of the neighbors that on Northwood that uses the same alley, driveway. And I just ask that you take into consideration to keep it residential, not only for me and my family, but for the others that live there, and keep it a safe and residential environment.
Thank you, Ms. Harper.
Council again. Again, I'm Greg West, 1184 County Road 476. I happened to be at that auction when the house sold. And all around this house is commercial. I don't know the gentleman, Mr. Beard. But what I do know is Dr. Brown, Dr. Ormsby have a practice that they've had as long as I can remember. And they also border residential neighborhoods. Dr. Randy Hillis has a practice behind the old Big Lots, and he's been there for 20 years. Dr. Dan Jackson has a practice, and he borders residential and commercial. And to my knowledge, I've never, and I know all these gentlemen, to my knowledge, I've never heard of any of their neighbors complain that they were a bad neighbor. And it's a very similar situation to what this gentleman's asking for. These are all dental offices. These are all dental offices bordering residential. So with that in mind, I think that this gentleman would be a good neighbor. I happen to also, with Dr. Brown, Dr. Ormsby, Dr. Randy Hillis, Dr. Dan Jackson. All three of those areas in Poplar Bluff, I have rental homes by. And it's never been an issue or never been a problem with any of those. I also have a rental home, too, near this same area on Sunset, where this gentleman's talking about putting in his dental office. I personally don't have any issue with it because I've never seen an issue with any of the others. I think that times do change, and I think the demographics of our city do change, and the people that live in a particular neighborhood changes over time. As far as heard earlier, people that own commercial rental areas get aggravated with their tenants moving. Well, you don't own your tenants; they can move anywhere they want.
You talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just checking.
Yep. You're the only one that talked about commercial tenants moving. And it's also in regards to your comment about neighborhoods going downhill with commercial ingress, I think that has more to do.
Rental property, but go ahead.
I think that if you do have commercial or your zoning get changed inside of an area, I think it absolutely could have a degradation effect. But this is surrounded by all commercial. I don't think that it would be a detrimental effect. And as far as like the parking, I can tell you now, I've been up and down Sunset enough times when there's yard sales. It's kind of hard to get up and down there. And so I was just going to voice an opinion that I own property next to 3 other dental offices, and if this one were to go in, it would be a 4th, and none of that's ever been an issue for us. So, it's whatever the council or the neighborhood wants to do, but I personally haven't had any problem.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions on this issue? Do we have any motions on item E?
I would like to move it to an additional workshop session at the next meeting.
Second.
Workshop? Motion and a second to move item E to a workshop September 23rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to comment on moving this to a workshop. I think I understand Mr. Russian's idea, and I'm not speaking for him, so he can correct me if I'm wrong. I think this gives the council more time to go out and take a look at the property and talk to the residents. I know I need to go, part of that is my ward, I'm going to need to go out probably and speak with them, the ones that haven't talked to me. As I'd like to. I know as a large councilman, you all will probably want to do something, but I need to do that to make a decision. And that would be my reasoning for that. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you. There's not anything further. We'll go to action required items. Bill number 7719, the City Council will take action on an ordinance accepting a bid for the sale of city property located on Midland Street.
Move for first reading of 7719.
Second.
Motion and second for first reading of 7719. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance accepting a bid for the sale of property owned by the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, located at Lot 51 Midland Street, Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Move for second reading, bill number 7719.
Second.
Motion is second for second reading of bill number 7719. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance accepting a bid for the sale of property owned by the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, located at Lot 51 Midland Street, Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Motion is second for adoption of bill number 7719. Any comments or questions? Roll call?
Councilman DeGaris.
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir.
Yes.
Councilman Branham.
Yes.
Councilman Tinsley.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russian.
Yes.
And Mayor Pearson.
Yes.
7 yes votes.
Moving on, bill number 7720. The City Council will take action. The City Council will take action on an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute a contract between the City of Poplar Bluff and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to execute a first supplemental master reimbursable utility agreement.
Move for first reading of bill number 7720.
Second.
Motion is second for first reading of bill number 7720. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute an amendment to the first supplemental master utility agreement between the City of Poplar Bluff and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission relative to Buy America.
Move for second reading, bill number 7720.
Second.
Motion is second for second reading of bill number 7720. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute an amendment to the first supplemental master utility agreement between the City of Poplar Bluff and the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission relative to Buy America.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Motion is second for adoption of bill 7720. Any comments or questions? Roll call?
Councilwoman Abshir.
Yes.
Councilman Branham.
Yes.
Councilman Tinsley.
Yes.
Councilman Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russian.
Yes.
Mayor Pearson.
Yes.
We have 7 yes votes.
Bill number 7721, the City Council will take action on an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute an amendment to the agreement between the City of Poplar Bluff and Show Me Technologies, LLC.
Motion for first reading of bill 7721.
Second.
Motion is second for first reading of 7721. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute an amendment to the contract between the City of Poplar Bluff and Show Me Technologies, LLC.
Move for second reading.
Second.
Motion is second for second reading of bill number 7721. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to execute an amendment to the contract between the city of Poplar Bluff and Show Me Technologies, LLC.
Move for adoption of 7721.
Second.
Motion is second for adoption of 7721. Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Councilman Branham?
Yes.
Councilman Tinsley?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russian?
Yes.
Mayor Pearson?
Yes.
7 yes votes.
Bill number 7722. The City Council will take action on an ordinance authorizing the City of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, SCS Investments LLC Project, Series 2014, in the principal amount not to exceed $1,050,000 for the purpose of providing funds to pay the costs of acquiring a facility for an industrial development project, and authorizing the mayor to enter into certain agreement and take certain other actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds.
Move for first reading of 7722.
Second.
Motion is second for first reading of bill number 7722. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance authorizing the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, SCS Investments LLC Project, Series 2014, and a principal amount not to exceed $1,050,000 for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring a facility for an industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for the project, and authorizing the mayor to enter into certain agreements to take certain other actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds.
Move for second reading.
Second.
Motion is second for second reading of bill number 7722. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance authorizing the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, SCS Investments LLC Project, Series 2014, in a principal amount not to exceed $1,050,000 for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring a facility for an industrial development project in the city, approving a plan for the project, and authorizing the mayor to enter into certain agreements, take certain other actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Motion is second for adoption. Before we go further, I just want to have Mr. Kaplan kind of go over that, just for the audience's sake.
So in this case here, the council is authorizing this abatement request for the purpose of obviously enticing the owner in this case to continue to reinvest in the community. Best way of describing it is, in this case, they're reinvesting in their property, but in the case of the reinvestment, they want to offset their costs by offsetting it with tax reductions to offset the cost of construction. Any questions, Madam Mayor?
I have none at the moment. Does anyone else? Any comments? Nothing else? Roll call?
Councilman Tinsley?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir?
Yes.
Councilman Branham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russian?
Yes.
Mayor Pearson?
Yes.
We have 7 yes votes.
Bill number 7723, the City Council will take action on an ordinance accepting a bid for consulting services with regard to the Kinzer and Cynthia Street Historic District project.
Move for first reading.
Second.
Motion is second for first reading of bill number 7723. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance accepting a bid for consulting services with regard to the Kinzer and Cynthia Street Historic District project.
Move for second reading, bill number 7723.
Second.
Madam Mayor, may I
Just-
speak on this?
Just 1 minute. Motion is second for second reading of Bill number 7723. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance accepting a bid for consulting services with regard to the Kinzer and Cynthia Street Historic District project.
Mr. Chrisman, would you like to speak?
Yes, Jim Chrisman, 464 North Main. This particular action also happened in my neighborhood on North Main. To the best of my understanding, only one property owner has taken advantage of the benefits that go along with some tax abatement or some bennies that come their way from this. It's very, very hard to use. The other question I'd ask, who has asked for this? Is this something that one of the neighbors out there has said, hey, we'd like to have this in our neighborhood? Or is that something that has been generated here within the bureaucracy of the city, or maybe on the part of the consultant? Because I think they're getting a salary of $21,250 for coming in and writing the same words that they have written on a lot of other documents. I think this is an absolute waste of money. In this case, it's other people's money, but why do we want to waste other people's money either? There are some local dollars involved. I think this is some dollars that could be saved. It may be in-kind services, but that's in-kind services that could be used somewhere else. It's a waste of dollars, it's other people's dollars, and I sure would like to know who has asked this, who is pushing this forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Avery, would you like to
I'd love to
explain this?
I'd really like to respond to that. We have a Historical Preservation Commission that operates within the city of Poplar Bluff. We take input from people in the neighborhoods, and this is actually scheduled to be on the agenda about 2 years ago for a historic district because of inquiries from people in that general area. We looked at the area. We had the State Historic Preservation Office come down and look at it, and they said this is a viable historic district. The Historical Preservation Commission, of which Mr. Chrisman could become a member of if he would like to apply the next time there's an opening, because he does have a historic house on North Main Street, as he noted. It's not that it changes the house that's there, but it does provide an opportunity if someone wants to invest in their property. It does provide advantages to them. It's not a simple program because you have to meet federal requirements. Money comes from the National Park Service through the State Historic Preservation Department with the Department of Natural Resources. So there are requirements and things that have to be done to avail yourself of the opportunity to benefit from the programs, but there is benefit out there. And no, we didn't dream this up within our department. Historic Preservation gave us some input on it. The state level gave us some input on it, and there are a number of professionals that provide these services. It just so happened that the one that was doing the last project for us looked at this one while she's in town, so gave us some information. We've been doing things like this probably since the 80s and 90s, so this is not something that's a new deal, you know.
What's the type of aggregate financial benefit that might exist for a historical district for the people that's there?
When you qualify and go by the guidelines of the national or the federal and the state level, I want to go back to one that was previously done, and it was a major project. It's the Vine Street Apartments. At one time, you had 25 or 30% break on your tax credit because of the money you invested in it. You could take a credit of 25 to 30% on the federal level. The state also, during that time period, was providing a substantial tax credit. The only way you made money or saved money was by spending money. They're not going out giving you vouchers for say, well, you know, you don't have to pay for these boards or that paint. You have to go ahead and spend the money, adhere to their guidelines and their rules, and you can receive a credit on that. So On a major project, it is substantial, the money that you can save by going by these guidelines. The last meeting that we were in on this, I believe Mr. Christmas spoke, and I said that there is someone in the neighborhood right across the street from where he lives that benefited from from this program, but I don't know that it's for everyone, but it is a valuable tool in some cases.
So in similar respect, if we're talking about in the situation that you just quoted,
Yes, sir.
if someone spent $10,000 and they qualified and went through all the keyholes and everything, they could probably expect a 30% tax credit, which actually means it'd be $7,000 cost for $10,000 worth
Or
of.
even greater savings possibly, depending on, because the federal and the state sometimes changes their level of tax credits that they're willing to grant. But yes, I mean, you're probably never going to save, 3/4 of your cost, but you could definitely go by their guidelines and save 40% or maybe even 50% if you could get the federal and the state tax credits at the same time.
In this particular one, the streets or the district they're talking about, do you know about how many of those do you think would participate in that program?
Well, I go by what is called a contributing structure and a non-contributing structure. Out of the 55 structures we have up there, I'm going to say 40 to 45 of them contribute to the historic character of that area. A lot of times when you have people that take advantage of that is when a new buyer comes in and wants to do substantial work on a structure. It's not so common for someone that's lived in that house for a long time to want to spend money on it. They're wanting to sell it for what they can.
Yeah.
But a new buyer a lot of times is willing to do it because they're planning on spending a significant amount of money anyway. So that's a savings to them when they go into that
So if
process.
those 45 structures, if they did that, and let's just say a minimum savings of $1,000 each, then that's a $44,000 total compared to the $21,000 you're paying for the.
Yes, sir.
All right, okay.
Yes, sir. And it could be even greater than that because they pay for things like insulation. I think there's a mosquito. Well, I got it.
You got him.
Hadn't lost my touch yet.
No, it goes way back.
I just can't get him off my phone. But
he was for revenge.
Yes, I know. So when you go into things like that, I mean, you can do windows, you can do insulation, you can do outside restoration. So projects like that mount up pretty quick, so it's not that uncommon to have a $15,000 or $20,000 project now. Sometimes you can do a small amount of work and do it more economically than you could go through the process with this. But,
Okay.
but there is value there.
Okay.
Mr. Avery, did we have any local bidders for this to do
No.
the work? And what are the bid could you explain what the qualifications are of the person who's bidding?
Would be glad to. We had 2 bidders. We put it out on our website, and then we contacted, I think, 4 firms that had previously bid. One of their firms was the one that was awarded the bid. One of the other firms was someone that had been on a previous project. We had one company bid that we had never heard of before, so we had to assume they found us on our city's website, and that's how they learned about the project. And then we had one lady that doesn't live in town, but that she used to live here. She's out of Jackson. She did not bid on this project. She had bid on previous projects. And then we had a lady that was from the Cape Girardeau area previously that moved out of state. And she did a project for us, I believe, before she moved, and she's done at least one more since then. And that was the firm that was awarded the bid.
So there were no local entities that could do this?
No.
Was this the lowest bid?
This was $235 higher than the other bid. We had no knowledge of the Cultural Resources Analyst firm is out of Evansville, Indiana. Not Hopkinsville. Let me read it.
Where is this firm from? You said Cape?
No. She lives out of state now. She was from Cape Girardeau. She now lives in North Carolina. She's doing work in Webb City, Missouri. She's doing work in Ponca City, Oklahoma. She's done quite a bit of work with Old Town Cape and things like that over previous years, and has a connection with Southeast Missouri State University also, I believe. And you were asking about where they were both from.
You pretty much answered my question.
Okay, so that's, any other questions? Yes, David?
What's the comparison of rental property and actual homeowners in that area, you think?
A couple of the streets are almost all home-owned, but several of the streets are getting quite a few rentals. Not near as many as across 9th Street. If you go to the other side of 9th Street, you have a higher percentage. And we actually tried to expand to that area, but we found that we didn't have enough structures that still had their features intact.
Does this go down to complete Cynthia Street, full length of the street? Or Cynthia?
It goes from 9th Street to 11th Street on Kinzer and Cynthia, and it goes on Lois, on the south side of Lois, from 9th to 10th. And then Lester, no, not Lester. Yeah, there are some on Lester, too. It's 57 structures.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and a few of those are already on the historic register. One on 11th Street and one on Kinzer Street are already on the individual register. But I do have all these resources here available on the bids that we received, so if anybody wanted more information, I'll be glad to.
Mr. Avery, can you give a summary for the council as to the services that are being provided for the fee?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Must be in here. I will read from the one nomination first. This is the one that the Historic Preservation Commission and my department, as we rated the submittals, recommended approval for. This is, they will prepare a National Register of Historic Places nomination form for Historic Residential District in Poplar Bluff. The residential district nomination is to be prepared for Kinzer, Cynthia, North 10th, 11th Streets Historic District. Approximately 57 residential dwellings in the area bounded as I just described. They will do extensive research in the files and records of the County of Butler, and mapping, online services. This lady actually subscribes to Butler County's website at the courthouse so she can collect information that way. Okay, and here is, there we go. This is pretty dry information here, but this is what they will do. They provide 2 copies of the National Register Historic District forms in hard copy, and 1 set to National Park Service, 1 set to the Department of Natural Resources Historic Preservation Department. They will map it all out, showing which properties contribute, which don't. And out of that, we're probably looking at close to 80% historic. And you ask about the rentals and the homeowners. That will be determined as well, of which ones people that own it actually live in it. I would suspect that we're probably about 65 to 70% owners that own and live in the area. They will do mapping showing all the boundaries to a scale. They will provide photographs, substantial photographs of each structure from the outside. They don't do any inside work. They prepare the nomination and associated illustrations on disk and electronic format and paper format to submit. They will come in and have 2 meetings, local meetings, with the people from the area and Historic Preservation Commission and any interested parties. I would hope that some of the council would come to that and see what is presented. I think that this area is worthy of a historic nomination. Some of our nicest, older, well-maintained structures that go back into the early 1900s, a few of them even farther back than that. But that's for the most part. 1905 to 1925 it's the date when a lot of this stuff up in this area was built. It's not original town, but it was here when the original town was put in place. Now, I can read from the other one, they substantially are going to offer the same thing. Once we reviewed and looked at them, we felt that we were
It's okay,
getting...
Mr. Avery.
We were getting more value and more work put in by the one that we recommended approval on, and that's part of the reason why we recommended approval of that firm.
There's no local firms in this area that could do this?
No, we don't have anyone that, like I said, there's a lady local, that used to be local, that did not bid on the last two projects we had out, and we still continue to send out to her every time and hope if she would bid, we'd definitely give her consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not opposed to this district being designated historic. What I'm opposed to is spending $21,250 to an outside consultant to do it. Why can't this be done locally? Why can't some official of the city do this? I mean, this is, you're talking about writing some words that have been written before and putting them in the mail. It's just not that difficult. The other thing, in talking with Faye Wamsley, and that's my neighbor that did take advantage of the tax credits, I chose not to because if I understand the way she explained it to me, your changes to your house, your remodeling has to be 50% of the cost basis in the house. If you paid $100,000 for your house, you've got to spend $50,000 on it to get that benefit back. So it's not a matter of, hey, I'm going to spend $1,000 for windows, I'm going to get 20% of it or 50% of it back, whatever it is. It's not that. You've got some qualifying numbers that you've got to take a look at there. This is, I understand this $21,000 is covered by a grant, and I assume that we have already received the grant or at least close. But isn't there a local contribution that has to be made from that, something in the neighborhood of $6,000? And maybe this is the objection that I have more than anything else, is paying for something that really doesn't buy us anything. Thank you.
Do we have to match any of this?
It's 60-40. You have 60% federal funds and 40% local funds. The local funds would amount to, in round numbers, $8,500, and the federal funds would amount to $12,750. And that would come up to, I think, $21,250 total. So, yes.
Thank you.
Am I understanding this correctly? In order to be on the National Registry, we have to have something like this?
Yeah, you have, the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office require us to provide a survey by a qualified individual. And all of these firms that have submitted were qualified individuals. They have the historic preservation consultant training and all that.
Do we not
So,
have
yes.
anyone in the city?
No.
Okay.
And without this, we can't, none of these houses would qualify for it.
You can't submit without having the qualified person do the survey.
Mr. Avery, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Madam Mayor. The part of the 40% that the city is obligated to pay, can any of that 40% be used towards in-kind services?
There is a percentage. When we submit a grant to the state, we evaluate it and look at a real close number of what we think it will take to do that. And our number was $22,000, of which 60% would be federal money and 40% would be local money. When we got our bids back, the price went down, if we approved the one that we recommended, by $750. So the state still wants to provide us 60% of $22,000. And we will use staff time, and we will have some staff time involved in this working process. We can use that $750 as offsetting our cost.
So
Yes.
using staff labor time offset part of our 40%
Yes, sir.
portion. Okay, thank you.
We can use 40%, we can actually offset $750, and we're not even paying the full 40% of the $22,000, so.
Understand, thank you.
Okay, we've had a first and a second reading of Bill number 7723. Where'd the council like to go with this?
We had adoption.
We hadn't had adoption yet.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Motion is second for adoption of Bill number 7723. We've already had an extensive comment and question period. Roll call.
Councilman Johnson?
No.
Councilman DeGaris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir?
Yes.
Councilman Branham?
No.
Councilman Tinsley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russian?
No.
Mayor Pearson?
No.
It fails.
Bill number 7723 fails. Moving on, Bill number 7724, the City Council will take action on an ordinance vacating an undeveloped platted portion of Miller Street running north and south of Poplar Street to Vine Street.
Move for first reading.
Second.
Motion is second for first reading of Bill number 7724. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance vacating an undeveloped platted portion of Miller Street running north and south from Poplar Street to Vine Street of the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, as requested by Bethia Hefner.
Move for second reading, Bill number 7724.
Second.
Motion, I'm sorry, Council,
I'm away from it.
you're abstaining, you're
Yeah.
away. Okay. Motion is second for second reading of Bill number 7724. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
An ordinance vacating an undeveloped platted portion of Miller Street running north and south from Poplar Street to Vine Street of the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri, as requested by Bethia Hefner.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Motion is second for adoption of Bill number 7724. Any comments or questions?
I have a comment. This property's going to a person that will take very good care of it, has taken care of it, and it should have been done a long time ago. And I'm glad that she's getting a piece of property to take care of.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilman DeGaris?
Yes.
Councilwoman Abshir?
Yes.
Councilman Branham?
Yes.
Councilman Tinsley?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pearson?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pearson.
It's okay. All right. Moving on to Resolution 1806. The City Council will take action on a resolution making an appointment to the Fair Housing Board.
Move for reading of resolution 1806.
Second.
Motion is second for reading of Resolution 1806. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Smith?
A resolution making an appointment to the Fair Housing Board of the city of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Move for adoption.
Second.
Motion is second for adoption of Resolution 1806. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, wait.
Roll call.
My apologies. Any comments or questions? The appointee, it would be Andrew Murphy, by the way, and he would be wonderful. Roll call?
Councilwoman Abshir?
Yes.
Councilman Branham?
Yes.
Councilman Tinsley?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes.
Councilman DeGaris?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russian?
Yes.
Mayor Pearson?
Yes.
7 yes votes.
Okay, moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. is provided in council packets. You'll see the first of many financial reports that you will start to see on a regular basis. We're calling this report the ratio report, and in this, it's a snapshot in time. If you take the city of Poplar Bluff, and again, this snapshot in time, as you can see from the heading, is December 31st of 2013. And when you take the city of Poplar Bluff and you take that snapshot of the financials and you compare it with other like communities, and again, there's no exact one-for-one in communities throughout the Midwest region or the greater Missouri area, but for comparison purposes, those cities are listed in the report, which is the cities of Mount Pleasant, Texas, Mustang City, Oklahoma. Again, I'm probably slaughtering this, but Creve Coeur, thank you. Creve Coeur, Missouri, Ozark, Missouri, Kirksville, Missouri, Farmington, Missouri, Warrensburg, Missouri, Nederland, Texas, La Vista, New Orleans, I'm sorry, that's not New Orleans, NE. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind today. Nebraska, thank you, and Jenkins, Oklahoma. And so when you take those 10 city averages, as you can see from the second column, and you can just compare it straight down the financial statement through, you'll see what we have to work with. Again, I'm not giving you this report to create a depressing or a negative viewpoint. It's not. It just shows you that the city has work to do. Now, however, a couple things to note that I want to make sure is noted. At this snapshot in time, the sale of the cable franchise and assets relating to was not a part of, obviously, this. So you had debt from that that's now been paid off. And that sale is still progressing. It's hopefully almost done, but it's moving forward. So you have that. But when you offset that by the additional tax increment finance debt that the city is responsible for, now we're not responsible to the tune of, meaning that if there's default on those bonds, is the city responsible for paying them? No, we're not. However, since the TIF district was created by ordinance, by city ordinance, it has to be included in the city-wide financial statements. And so if you swap them out, it's almost a one-for-one, and so it still would show you kind of where you would be. And so I don't want to mislead you in any way. I just want to make sure you understand how this analysis was tabulated for you. But in here, again, it just shows you where we're at and where we were as of December 31st. Now, is this picture different as of today? Absolutely it is. However, what I'm going to be showing you in a series of these reports is anytime, obviously, you take on debt, it should be done so very, very conservatively. And so we're going to start having that dialogue, and we're going to have that discussion at all times because even though TIF debt, as you see in this case, the city is not held, they're held harmless against that debt, it does not mean that we don't still carry the debt for a development. And so we need to present that to our public. And so the other things that are noted in here, obviously, are different ratios from going from cash on hand, how many days worth, to how much debt we carry per citizen. And again, across the board, we are not at the mean of the other comparing cities. But just to show you where my thought process has come in, this shows you how I evaluate the city's position to plot a course for sustainability. And so I know it's been a long meeting, but I just wanted to see if there was any questions about the report and kind of go from there.
Well, just for clarification, is it the TDD or is it the TIF that ties into a percentage of the property taxes in the district that it's in?
The TDD does not include property tax capture. Now, the TIF district, per state law, does. But however, let me explain that for a minute because this is quite a unique financing deal. So in tax increment finance authorities in Missouri and Michigan are very, very similar. They set a baseline, in this case it's 2011. Any assessed valuation above that 2011 value is 100% can be captured into the TIF district, and we're talking property tax valuations. Now, in lieu of the city going down that route, because not only would it impact the city, it would impact the school district. The city negotiated a percentage of sales tax in lieu of using the actual valuation in the capture, which normally if all things were equal and you did nothing, that's what would go into this authority. However, what I would like to position this is you look at it where it's new money, I like to call it, okay? Yeah, you would have had property tax valuation money coming in. However, trivia question, to make sure you guys are a little awake here, is it, do you gain more revenue from sales tax or from property taxes? Sales tax. Okay, well, we gave up what we get more of in this case, so this development, to protect not only our assessed valuation piece, but we did it to protect another taxing district, being the school district in this case. So what I like to show anyone who asks me that question is yes. The answer is yes. The theory is based on that assessed valuation being captured into the district. However, to offset any harm to any other taxing authority, we negotiate a percentage of our sales tax collected in lieu of that. I hope I'm being as clear as
Sure.
mud.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, got you.
I have a question regarding the health insurance. At some point in time, we're going to have to address that issue because we've kind of just went off a cliff in the last 2 years. I think we went from under $1 million to probably 2.2 million in the red. How are we maybe going to be able to correct that?
My recommendation for consideration of the council will be to break up that liability because I believe there's two parties that are involved that are adding to the deficit. Obviously, there's the city themselves being the employer, and then obviously the employees in the percentage of what they pay towards the premium, which should offset claims. In this case, obviously, neither what the city is paying towards the contribution of claims or what the employees are collecting are sufficient to cover the burden of the claims that we've been receiving on an annual basis. There's ebbs and flows to claims, we all know that, but in this case, the city is, it's been going in the wrong direction where we're adding up to a deficit that's approximately around $2.5 million. And so what I'm going to be proposing for consideration at a future council meeting will be a split and a share of that liability by the city being the employer and the employee. Now, of course, with that, there'll be an evaluation of the benefits that we offer as well to make sure we put together a package that we're going to be using one-time monies to pay down this debt, but we want to make sure if we're using one-time monies that we are in a sustainable path, meaning that we are in a position where we're taking in, or at least at a break-even point, revenues over expenditures. We don't want it the other way around where we've been historically for several fiscal years now. So you're going to see a full package. It's not going to be just, okay, what does the city have to pay, what's the employee has to pay. You're going to see that also with an analysis on those benefits to find something that I hopefully will be agreeable to all parties. And I will be working very closely with our labor union contacts and our employees as well in the non-bargaining area, just to make sure full disclosure is being given at all times of what we intend to do. But we want a consensus. Again, I don't want this to be a top-down decision. I want this to be a consensus of the employees and the employer together, coming together with any option for the council consideration for how to offset this expense, and that recommendation will be coming within the next month.
Mr. Kaplan, looking at the days of cash, that's kind of, the average city has 236 days of cash and we only have 56.
And again, that's only at the point in time. Obviously, that number is dramatically different now. If you looked at today with the sale of the cable franchise, obviously that number is going to go up, if I ran your report as of today. But yes, as a snapshot in time where you were as of December 31st, Poplar Bluff was substantially below where the 1030 average is, or I'm sorry, it was at this point in time.
In your comparison of cities, what did you use? Did you use population or?
Well, if you look at the second portion of that, cities were chosen based on population size, location of being a Midwestern city, and having similar services such as a utility fund. And again, there's no one for one, but that's how we used the criteria for selecting these cities.
I guess my point there is that Poplar Bluff is a 17,000, 20,000, but I mean, it's obvious that we have, with our geographic location, nothing being west of us, the amount of people that we service does that skew the figures? Shouldn't our figures really be higher than the average 20,000?
No, the reason why it's not, because the people that are outside the area, the transient population you're referring to is not obligated to pay the taxes. The taxpayer of the city of Poplar Bluff is obligated to pay any debt burden that's placed on the city. And so that's a reason why, yes, is it a compelling piece of the overall picture? Yes, it is, because it shows you that's what it has for sales tax revenues.
That's my point.
Right.
As you said, what's the greater sales tax?
Right, and that's why we do.
Sales tax is definitely.
That's right. That's why our sales tax is greater, is because of that transient population, which we do want to encourage. Don't get me wrong. But however, they do not have to pay a portion of the liability in regards to the debt. I'd love to be able to use them, but I can't.
Mr. Kaplan, I don't know if I'm right on this or not, but on the TIF information, that's the 8 Points project, and that was part of our, way I remember, that's part of our agreement to get all that going. And they weren't even in the city at the time. It was a stipulation they would come into the city, and that's providing us additional revenue from those taxes by providing this break on the taxes. Is that correct?
It is, but the debt is not going to be satisfied on that TIF debt until it's way out there. It's like way past 2030, if I remember right. And I'm going from this memory now. And so once the debt is satisfied, correct, there will be an overall positive gain by the city. There'll be gain from this development. That's correct, sir.
Yes, and there is gain now because before there wasn't anything coming in from that area.
Well, right now it's correct, but right now is it's what I call more of it's a negative right now until we offset that debt. And so, but I do agree that it will be a positive development once it gets going and developed, and we start we get the debt satisfied.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Susan McVeigh, 211 Cayley Circle, Poplar Bluff. Mayor and members of the council. Mr. Kaplan, I understand that you're quite concerned with the budget, and the public wants to know, we understand that you've hired a grant writer, a financial person, and a personal assistant that were not in our budget. How do you justify those positions, and why did you not advertise?
You can address.
Okay. Well, okay. So in regards to the budget, again, all budget reports are due, I believe this coming 8th of September to Mr. Massingham's office. And so once the budget worksheets are received, at that point, I'll be looking over everything to make sure we have a balanced budget. Again, and that's not been the historic practice of the city. We run deficit budgets.
Balanced budgets, it's state statute to be balanced budgets.
Yeah, it's a balanced budget, but however, when you look at the actual performance of your financial statements, you've run a deficit budget every year, and so it's one thing to say you're going to follow a budget, and it's another thing to not follow your budget, and this city has not followed the budget for several years.
Is that how you justify these extra expenses in the past 2 weeks?
I justify the extra expenses based on spending money wisely. This city has never had a grants coordinator. and I find that amazing, is you got a city that's got a household medium income of $27,000. You know how much federal money is eligible for this community? I know already when you look at the housing and urban development funds that are coming to our housing authority, but however, over and beyond that, what federal money we are leaving on the table, this grants coordinator will well overpay for themselves.
But
And
shouldn't
then
you have
some.
advertised for local people to do that?
Yeah,
You
I
all
mean,
just shot down something for not doing local.
you know, and so in this case, was that an option? Yes, but in this case, I felt, you know what, I want to get going and bring in money to Poplar Bluff. That to me is my agenda. Is there times where I'm a little antsy and impatient? You bet I am. But in this case, I'm on the side of the citizen that I want to get them money as fast as I can instead of putting
The
forth
citizens feel like they're
excuse me,
spending
ma'am,
money.
and instead there's a bureaucratic process in delaying that. And again, that's just me and my preference. In this case, I'm proud to present, we have a candidate who meets our EEO practices and guidelines of trying to promote diversity within our workplace. And so African-American female, well-educated, well-qualified, I'm happy to have her here among of our team.
At what cost would that be?
What cost her salary is $60,000 a year.
You hired a grant writer for $60,000 a year?
I did. I'm proud of it as well.
And the financial person, what was the cost for that?
I don't have a financial person other than the consultant. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
It's an hourly rate, and I don't have it, but I can get it to you.
Okay. And then the cost of the personal assistant?
$15 an hour.
Okay. Will you be advertising for these positions in the future?
I don't know. I'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So to finish up my ratio report, is there any other questions I can help answer at this point in time? But again, let me reiterate, this city has not followed a balanced budget for many, many, many fiscal years. And you're very fortunate to be in the cash position you are right now, and it's due to a sale. If it wasn't due to a sale, you guys would be in a completely different ball game at this point. So the goal here is to use money wisely towards, infrastructure and debt and liabilities that we referred to in this conversation, and not blinded by decisions I'm making towards the future of this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anything else from anyone else?
Make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
She didn't ask me.